builders for months now. True. And Harry's been here since August? Edward nodded. What do you think of him? He seems great. I haven't really spoken to him much. He's always rushing off somewhere. He's been setting up his firm's new office in Brighton. Ah, Abby said, now understanding why the young man she'd seen coming and going always looked slightly frazzled around the edges. Any idea who you'll rent yours out to? Edward asked. Abby looked closely at his face. You're still worried about that, aren't you? What? No. Yes, you are. You're worried I'm going to fill the hall with hopeless artists who can't pay their rent, little as I'm charging, and that the whole place will fall back into ruin. I'm not worried. I trust you, he said. You do? He cleared his throat. Mostly. Abby laughed. Edward was notoriously rational when it came to business matters. He'd thoroughly vetted each of his applicants, deciding that the apartments on his side of the hall were only to be let to professionals on good, solid incomes. It was thoroughly sensible, of course, but Abby had other ideas. She wanted to let her side out to artists and creatives, people who were trying to make a difference in the world. Maybe they were struggling and would never have been able to afford to live somewhere like Winfield. Well, Abby wanted to step in and give them the opportunity to live somewhere beautiful and inspirational while they found their footing. It was her way of passing on a little of the luck she felt had come her way with her design business, paying it forward, sharing the joy. And although Edward claimed that he approved of her idea, she couldn't help thinking that he was harbouring some misgivings about it. But she liked him all the more for that. She liked that he was different from her with his serious notions about how people should earn a living. He was so thoroughly old-fashioned, and she rather enjoyed teasing him. I've already had a trapeze artist apply, Abby told him now. Only she wanted to set up a rope between the roof and the top of the walled garden. You're kidding. Edward had turned white. Abby giggled. Yes, I'm kidding. Edward shook his head. My heart nearly stopped then. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. They left the apartment together. Just let me know who you decide on, won't you? So you can vet them, she asked. So I can come and say hello and welcome them to Winfield, he countered. She smiled. I promise. Harry Freeman loved his new home, but he found he wasn't spending as much time there as he'd hoped he would. Giving up his place in London hadn't been as much of a wrench as he'd thought it would be. When his boss had told him that the new office for their advertising company was opening in Brighton and he was one of the chosen to make the transition, Harry was flattered, even though there were rumours among some of his colleagues that the newly appointed Brighton team were as good as being excommunicated. But Harry didn't see it like that at all. For him, it was a chance for a fresh start. There was also the added bonus of living in the country, which had always appealed to him. He'd grown up in London's suburbs in several smart terraced houses with small, neat back gardens enclosed by fences. He hadn't minded the limited space in London until recently, when he'd felt the need for something more. Then the job opportunity had arisen, and he'd started looking at property in Sussex and had found Winfield. He'd never forget his first view of it as he'd driven into the village, and he'd had to pinch himself that living in such a place was possible. It was so, well, palatial compared to the flats on offer in the city. It all seemed to be right somehow. Harry's parents had moved out of London to live in Sussex a few years ago, and it would be nice to be closer to them and see them more often. He just hadn't had the time when he'd been working in London. His hours had pretty much been round the clock, and he'd often found himself taking little jobs home with him, working into the early hours and feeling permanently shattered. And that didn't seem to be changing now that he was living at Winfield. So much for a slower pace of life in the country, he thought. Mind you, it was early days at the Brighton office, and the teething problems wouldn't go on forever. Then he would have time to enjoy Winfield properly. He wouldn't feel bone-shatteringly tired all the time. He could sit in his beautiful apartment, gazing out at that view, maybe browse a newspaper or even pick up a book. When was the last time he'd done that? He really couldn't remember. It was all work and no play these days, and everybody knew what that made you, a very dull boy. He recalled Edward Townsend's kindness when he'd first moved in. Remember to enjoy this place, Edward had told him. It's a great